I'm appealing to everybody in the world out there, every friend and follow, everybody in the world I can. The battle of good and evil is an EMP pulse, spreading like a virus, affecting all of us. Animals go around circles over the earth, birds falling at the sky, fish go around circles in the ocean, magnetic field changing worldwide, bacteria collapsing our immune system by 50 to 100% in majority population. Our fauna collapsing between 38 and 90% nutrition value. So it's affecting all of us. And nature, fauna, animals, and our biological system. With stress, pandemics and suicide rates, and that kind of hyper-sensitivity, EMP pulse worldwide, affecting everybody. Magnetic fields. If you look at the buying syndromes worldwide with peer reports from every hospital in the world escalating non-stop, people losing their magnetic pulse, EMP pulses. We were told we were going into sixth mass extinction, stripped from our sixth sense to the sixth time. And our sixth sense upwards is 27 biofields. Go and listen to Sabrina Wallace. She worked for NASA about biofields, our biosphere. We have 32 senses. We have dimensional thinking, remote viewing, mental telepathy, ESP, telekinesis, levitation, spoon bending, clock winding, folding space and time with deja vu to predict the future and prevent what's going to happen. But no one can use that anymore. They can't use the magnetic fields. Okay, so they can't use what we call our supernatural power, which is spirituality when it comes to the crunch. We talk about superhuman beings with militaries in movies and drugs like in the movie Limitless. And George Clooney when they were stealing a ghost. Matrix documentary, Resurrection, to cross over. Okay, Madame Web to predict the future, prevent what's going to happen. You know, when you see movies like this, it means people know. Mathematical minds, right? To master their mind, use 100% of their brain. The whole world can only use 7 to 15%. So they suffer the human conditioning from one thing or the other, no matter what comes out of their mouth, no matter what they say. Every human being on earth, 98.7% suffers the human conditioning because they're trapped in mentality, in a personality, and can only use 7 to 15% of their brain. You can see that in the movie Limitless with a drug that takes you out of your mind to master your mind, use 100% of your brain with a vortex of information, with an outside influence on your reality, with sevenfold wisdom and knowledge. And they show you that right in front of your face in the movie, with the drug that Christ and Moses used from a plane called Mayhem. Bread manna, they called it. We developed that drug in Australia on every testing centre across the country and prove you under mind control. That caused the biggest amount of research and DNA study ever done, to use our primordial state, to use our primordial motor skills, to use our natural selection of when DNA study done. We found the cure of every single thing we suffer from in our biological genes with our natural process and our genetic memory by using our ancestor tools, coded in our own DNA with data. And we have the data to do every single thing that Christ can, every apostle in that bloodline, in that DNA. It's coded in our own DNA. But only a handful of people can do that. And they are the last human beings born on earth that can do everything Christ can and more, and every apostle in that bloodline with those abilities, with supernatural power. Divine power to command nature, they call it. And you can see in their biological fields, in their aura clockwise, 24 hours a day, in their own aura, in their sixth sense. When they live in their sixth sense, they live in spirituality and not trapped in mentality, in a personality, which 98.7% of the population is, and live in denial about. A species in denial, they call them. And that was declared in 2003, a species in denial, going into sixth mass extinction, stripping the sixth sense for the sixth time, and they all live in denial about it. They can't handle the truth, man. They can't face the fact of what's happening around the world and only live in their own truth with their own opinions, worldwide. And that's how it is. And it's not a joke, it's real. You know, there's only a handful of people that really knows what's going on and knows what the truth is and lives outside the mind to master the mind, use 100% of their brain. Nobody else can. Only a handful of people can. The whole world can only use 10% of their brain in over 99%. The highest IQ people can only use 15 to 16% of their brain at any given time. We can use 100%. And do you know what it's like to put up with the rest of your system? Do you actually realise what it's like to put up with the rest of the world when you can master your own mind, think outside the mind, and use 100% of your brain? Do you know how stupid the rest of the world really is? You haven't got an idea. You haven't got an idea how much you've got to succeed and gain from this neither. That's the obvious. And it's so ridiculous when everybody in the world lives in so much denial when we have the cure of every single thing you suffer from the human conditioning. Okay, and people just don't listen. They're too busy entertaining themselves with their own opinions, with a voice in mind that's ultimately designed for human extinction for that reason alone. And that's where the truth is. They can't deal with. Their voices in their mind is ultimately designed for human extinction because they're just personalities and they're living in their own mentality and their personality. They're not living in spirituality. And when they're not, they don't know what they're doing. Like Christ said, think outside the mind, follow my footsteps, go back to your childhood, and you can do what I can and more. And when you can, you know what the rest of the world's like. You don't have to argue about it. There's nothing to argue about. There isn't any grammar or new age, religious, political cults, or any system that's going to get you out of this. None of your artificial intelligence, artificial mutation, or the grammar that you select will get you out of this because you have no idea what's going on. The mind doesn't know. You can see that with a drug and limitless. It's that easy to prove it's not funny. I can give you a drug that proves to you you have no idea what you're doing. And the minute you take that drug, you know. Like that. Boomfa. Like you see in the movie Limits, he comes out of his shell and looks back at himself. He gets a massive clarification. No more trapped in the mind with brain fog in a psychedelic effect. And he masters his mind to use 100% his brain, writes a book overnight that's brilliant, goes down to Wall Street and makes millions of dollars, and turns the eyelids of the biggest entrepreneurs with the highest IQ. Think about it for a moment, because you need to. They know how to do it with drugs, but they can't do it organically because they can't create the sacred secretion that gives them the conduction agency, right, to open up their progenitor genes with ancestral genetic memory and 130 nucleosome molecules genetic repair kit in their aura clockwise in their 27 biofields. Divine power to command nature. The most powerful divine power to command nature in your own biological genes to do every single thing that Christ can and more in your own genetic memory, in your own genetic process, but you don't know how to because you have amnesia. And if you don't believe in that, then you'll never know. Then you'll never cross over and you'll never find out, and therefore you will never know. When you have amnesia, it means you do not know and the mind cannot work it out how to go back into primal state to use your natural selection and your natural organic molecules that you have in your own DNA, the Book of Life, declared worldwide. In your own DNA, if you follow the right footsteps and the right family tree coded in your own DNA. Think about it for a moment, because your mind doesn't know how to, for a reason. It's been developed that way. Everything else is anti-clockwise in this world. Every single thing is anti-clockwise in your biology, in your own DNA, in your body cells. I'm clockwise. You are anti-clockwise at 98.7% in voltage and reliability in your aura, in your body cells, and they're going corruption, corrosion, collusion in the daytime and can only repair at night time. They only work 1 to 5% during the day. They work 95 to 99% at 3.5 hours at night. Mine works perfectly 24 hours a day. Big difference. Massive difference. It means my genetic repair kit has tools that you do not have. And that's recorded with biological evidence and DNA studies done with a transformation happening in my DNA over 16 years and a 34-year study. A 34-year study and 16 years with DNA. I apologize. 2001 is 24 years. 24-year DNA. My first DNA study was taken when they began DNA studies in 2001. 2008, they found out I can cure the human conditioning in DNA to preserve DNA with longevity in my DNA, self-preservation over life in 2008. In 2012, I was clinically dead for 23 minutes, paralysed my neck down, got up and walked out of hospital. 3.5 years later, I sat down with the top bowlers in the whole world and the biggest think tank, and they said, I'm one of a kind. I'm one of a kind that can do all these things. I had a major heart attack with 3 stents fitted, had to take 5 medications for the rest of my life, stopped smoking, and that happened in 2008, and I did nothing about it. 4 years later, I flatlined with a major stroke, paralysed my neck down till I never walk again. Get up and walk out and live on my right hand leg for 3.5 years. Then go into this for 6.5 hour meeting, and they'd tell me, Kim, go back to that moment because your leg is the evidence. You were in fact paralysed when you died, and you did get up and walk out yourself, but when your son walked in, you put your arm around his neck and hopped out of that hospital and been living on your right hand leg ever since. But we can now tell on your Neuralink, right, what the facts are. You've grown brand new arteries around your stents. You fixed your arteries better today than when you had the heart attack. And we don't know how. You don't take the medication and you're still smoking. Okay, but we can see it in our biological evidence. And your Neuralink's perfect, which proves that your right hand leg, you were in fact paralysed and you went into fight-flight mode and to think instinctively outside the mind, and you repaired it yourself. We have 190 people who's died, clinically dead, paralysed from the neck down in major strokes, and got up and walked out the hospital themselves, just like you. We know something from this. Kim, you can fix it yourself. Go back to that moment and you can fix your leg yourself because you did it yourself. All you need is to have faith in your own biological genes with their genetic memory and ancestral tools that you used when you got up and walked out to cure yourself. So go back to that moment that you were in. You went back in your progenitor genes with your ancestral tools and you fixed it yourself because we know that with DNA studies done. Kim, there's 6,000 people now that's had stents fitted like you have and grown new arteries around through natural selection. And this natural selection, Kim, we can tell with the mastermind reports with you since 1984 when you knew how to mastermind the biggest think tank and you had godlike power in the Gatekeeper report, in the Star category. We can now put all the pieces together, Kim. You brought your own wife back to life in 1992, Kirsty Ashley, in Ipswich Hospital. When she flatlined and Narcan taken to the hospital, she was given 0% chance of living. When she flatlined in hospital, she came back to life, not once, not twice, but 3 times. She wrote the most powerful poem to the and read the one and only. We interviewed her, Kim, and your brother from the Gensi bus section. And what did they both say? They were sent back from heaven to earth because of you, Kim. They both said the same thing. And they're not the only ones, but they're the ones with the most powerful confirmation and the 2 most powerful miracles that we have listed on record in modern history. Both attached to you and both said the same thing when they died, that they were sent back to heaven, from heaven to earth because of you. That's why she wrote that poem, You're the One and Only. And we can confirm now with DNA, you are the one and only in the biggest study ever done. Kim, for that reason alone, but there's a natural selection taking place. We realize some of you were selected years ago, around 1960, the last human beings born on Earth. But the 212 phenomenon that you also went through when you died, you went through a transformation in your DNA. We can see the massive transformation from 212 to 216, Kim. You went through a massive altercation in your DNA. And we now know that you know something we don't. We now know that you are aware of something we're not. But we're putting the pieces together in the biggest study we've done with Jeremy Givers, who found your DNA back in 2001, and the biggest study in 2008 when you cured bipolar that was uncurable with DNA studies done and history. We have the solid evidence. Kim, you're not the only one. There are people selected like this, like Winoff, Mastermind Xing, Indigenous people, 500 years old, with a birth certificate, and we know that you know them. We know back in 1997 you had a massive intervention with these people 10 feet tall in Alice Springs. Because when we interviewed them and they were willing to come to the table with their DNA, because they always go off the grid and don't go near us, Jeremy Givers met them and they know about you. And we know about you. going back to 1997. You were there, Kim, when there was a person there, 1,000 years old, that was 18 feet tall. The one who was shot and found in 2019, that was 5.3 meters tall. You met that person before that person was shot, and they found that skeleton in 2019. We know that. And he was over 1,000 years old. He was an elderly. We know that the orbs of light, the Min light, have a relationship with some people, and we know you have a relationship with that too, Kim. We know. We know these orbs of light that watch over us, and people that we studied in Australia that has a relationship. And we know you have a relationship as well, Kim, with divine power to create miracles that we can't explain. We know that through your history. We know that you've always had someone watching over you because your own arresting officer commends you on his affidavit and retires the police force. When he saw what you'd done, when you brought down the highest dead time ever on the 30 years, and you created the most powerful truth serum that they tested in their lab, and you created the laboratory glass that took a 14-hour process down to 3.5 that no scientists ever thought of, and you were the mastermind that unraveled everything in the Star Chamber inquiry and got them for treasoning and shut the case down, and that was the introduction to you. And that was the biggest think tank in the world when the NASA Crime Authority went to Parliament House to seek authority to unleash the biggest think tank, when they discovered on direction microphones, when you're in surveillance, that you could see the truth and feel the truth with deja vu and remote viewing. The minute they put pen to paper in a courtroom, you could feel it through the atmosphere with divine power, like an angel watching over you, with godlike power. And they knew that with direction microphones, right? And found out why you constantly were faster than them at 7 to 1. And why you think 7 times faster than they do. And you have every solution and prevent all the problems and brought the highest gangs killing and gang deaths and highest violent rates in the country to the lowest in 30 years. And you cured the human conditioning amongst people with a drug that went in the underground world into the biggest study with DNA. The most powerful truth serum, laboratorily tested by your top scholars and your arresting officer that realized the most powerful truth serum in the world, bringing people back in the primal state and took down the highest violence, crime rates, murder rates, domestic violence, where kids got taken up the parents, went home to get raped and bashed, became prison by Jews later, that caused the Royal Commission paying over 23 years, and the stolen back generation of Polity. Kim, you caused a whole lot in the biggest mental health research DNA study ever done with that truth serum. On every study, on every university, right, in every testing center across Australia, that truth serum, we know is responsible, right, for curing people and bring them back to the moral state and stopped all the violence, gang killing and deaths, and the lowest mental disorders and DNA defects, and the lowest violent rates, and the lowest domestic violence in over 30 years. And you did it in 4 years, Kim. We know. And it cured so many people going through this with the barcode of the EMP pulse when they come out of the shell. And we discovered that through these studies, that you found out how to get people out of this shell and cure the human conditioning with a drug. And that led to this research and the outcome, which is amazing stuff. And you wouldn't dream about that in a million years, nor did I. Not in a million years. But this is what caused the whole thing with DNA studies and us to come out of our shell on a drug, to go back in a primal state, to control our vessel from the outside in and not be trapped inside. With all that genetic process and genetic memory that comes to you out of the blue, like you see in the movie Limitless. I was put through this path, and we all have amnesia, and I died in 2012 and I had amnesia myself. Went through a massive transformation and woke up from amnesia with my own genetic process through a 3.5-year transformation you can't explain in a way you really understand. And that's the truth, because the mind doesn't know. And the mind's got no idea what's going on. But I went through a UAP experience. And let me tell you something. You're introduced to the devil to get driven into God. And I can tell you that's how it is, right? What's happening all over the world right now? People's on the spot right now, suffering, right, in here, in the mind. And that, my friend, is exactly what's going on. Every single thing in this hypersensitivity moment you're in now, with stress, fear, anxiety, confusion, frustration, delusion, paranoia, violence, drug pandemics, every single thing you're feeling right now is what's sending animals around circles over the earth. Birds falling out of the sky, fish going around circles in the oceans. And you're feeling it, man. But you're paying attention too much to social media and blah, 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 blah with everybody else. Actors, zombies, Hollywood spinners, Hollywood characters that's got no fucking idea because they cannot feel the truth. But those that are suffering out there can feel. And there's a reason why you're feeling. Every single thing that's going on with hypersensitivity, right? Okay? There are two wolves inside you. And you are in the biggest battle you've ever been in your life. Right now, spirituality against mentality. Okay? You're in a psychological warfare against your own spirit and you don't even know it. The battle's within you. And if you don't deal with that problem, you cannot feed two wolves at the same time. You have to make a choice. You have to make a decision. Who are you going to feed? Because what you're doing today with unnatural selection is you're feeding your mind all the time. And you keep feeding your mind with the same shit over and over and over and going faster and faster into nowhere, but your own extinction without realizing it. You only live in a comfort zone, in your own truth with your own opinion, and you got to get out of it. You got to get right out of your mind. The mind doesn't know. The mind's going to take you in the extinction. I'm telling you now, the mind will take you into the abyss in a sex mass extinction, stripping the sixth sense for the sixth time. And you got to cross over. You got to go through the rebirth. You got to be reborn. And when you go through the rebirth, reborn, believe me, it's like being a child again. And it's like, wow. And it's the most confusing thing. It really is. Right? The most daunting. Because the mind doesn't understand. And the mind cannot understand. The mind doesn't possibly understand. I went through a death experience that nothing in the world prepared me for. Nothing. But I had an outside influence where a voice said, from another dimension, said, you're going to die, you're going to die, you're going to die, you're going to die. And then I got pushed out of my vessel and my own vessel walked up the road. And I thought, what the fuck is going on, man? Then I dropped dead. I went back in my vessel, got pushed back out, went back in and dropped dead for 23 minutes and woke up 36 hours later, powerless, my neck down. When I told the doctors and nurses, I thought they would have heard a story like this. They looked at me like I was crazy. When they said I was paralyzed, I thought, no way, I'm out of here. I am out of here. So I got up and got out. Okay? So they thought it was a misdiagnosis, and so did I, obviously. But they said it was caused by stress, a lack of oxygen to the brain. And believe me, I was stressed. I couldn't have been more stressed. I could not have been more stressed. It was the most terrifying moment of my life, and nothing in the world prepared me for anything like this. And I'd never heard anything like this. Never. A voice from another dimension field says, I'm going to die, non-stop until I do. But I get up and I walk out of the house and I can't control my vessel like I'm possessed. Dead set possessed. I walk across the lawn, across the road and up the road. Then I get pushed out of my vessel and I'm watching my own vessel walk away. I'm thinking, holy shit, what's going on here, man? I wasn't the only one. Okay? A lot of people went through this in 2012 with the 212 phenomenon. Kim died. My personality and my mentality and the person that I was up until that day literally died. And I went through a transformation for 3.5 years to realize that. And then had the most powerful divine intervention I've ever had in my life. I never read the Bible. I never went to church. And nothing in the world prepared me for this neither. But an orbital light came into me at Perth Detention Centre. The day after, I was in the hospital and told I was one of a kind, and they told me, Kim, get up and fix your leg yourself, because you can. So I got up and fixed my leg myself in front of them. And it became a confirmation I could do it myself, but not only for them, but for me, that I could deliberately do this myself. And then I had to revise my perception about everything they told me. Every single thing, man, is going through my mind and thinking, what? Is this for real? Is this really happening to me? I'm one of a kind going through all this. Is this really genuinely happening to me? Because you cannot get this through your thick skull. Even though you're told by the top experts in the world and the top bowlers, you're told that you're one of a kind with all this. You're thinking, man, they've got to be wrong. You just feel like a rejected ordinary person, been in jail for 10 years, and you feel like nobody, that's rejected by everybody. You're in Perth detention centre, your family's against you, everybody's against you, you've done 10 years jail, you've been treated like a pile of shit, you've gone through fucking hell your whole life, and everybody's turning on you, yet you've done the most for society that anyone ever has. In 2004, Recorder gave 90% of my money away, more than $72 million to everyone around me, apart from everything else. And no matter what you do, right, people are either jealous and spiteful or criticise you, and they don't even know who you are. Nobody in my family does. I get no credit for nothing I've done. Everyone's a credit thief across the whole world with every single thing I'm responsible for. And then you can see where the truth is. When you're me and you realise what you've done, and everyone calls you an idiot, mental and stupid and crazy, you're the one who wants to steals credit from and runs down. Your own family and friends and everyone you know. You know how dramatic that really is? You haven't got a clue. But that's what I've had to put up with my whole life. Always being criticised, saying I'm mental, blah, 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 blah. And here I am being told this, and I've got to try and stomach that when my head is so fucked up from so much damaged goods, right, in my fucking mind throughout my whole life. So much damaged fucking goods. And I'm loaded and loaded and loaded with damaged goods. Fucking loaded with tons of it, man. Going through fucking hell. 10 years in prison, the biggest mental research and DNA studies done. I was on ground level in the biggest mental health research, right? Dealing with people with nefarious and mental disorders and defects every day of their life. Living in moral guilt and shame every day. In jail, where you got nothing but to dwell on your past. For 7 years, you dwell every day of your life. And going through shit like this in the biggest mental health research and live with people going through shit like this every day of your life. That's hardcore ground level shit where you learn things about life you'll never learn outside. How to manage your system and go through things like this in a place like this where everyone dwells so much on drugs and suffers the human condition so much you have no fucking idea. And they all do their heads in and do what the voice in the mind tells them, and that's why they're in there, because they're mentally institutionalised and suffer the human condition throughout the whole world. Right, through educational system, it's proven all over the world. People are mentally institutionalised with voices inside the mind, right, that prevents them from knowing what the truth is and can't escape. We find freedom in prison we cannot find outside in 7 years in DNA, biological evidence to preserve DNA. They found that in 2008. You think anyone's living the truth? Not at all. They haven't got a fucking clue what they're talking about. And it's sad when you realise how fucked up people really are in the mentality they live in and all think they know the truth when they know nothing about life at all. They cannot use their natural selection in life, their natural order that stops them from suffering the human conditioning so they don't suffer anymore. And we teach the resurrection with the book Freedom by Jim McGill, held by 16,000 top scholars world, the holy grail of life, and never suffering ever again from the human condition that you suffer from. And We're Not Breathing was won a Nobel Prize, right, without a credential, the holy breath of life, to recreate the sacred secretion you cannot create, to conduct with. And that's a conduction agency that we created in the drug, that we develop ourselves. And we found out how to develop ourselves. Our sacred secretion, to use the sixth sense and to see outside the mind with the light bulb in you. The picture that tells you thalamus you see in the movie Limits. A universal power, a codependent relationship coded in our own DNA with the EMP pulse of the attuned codependent power. And when you have that kind of relationship and you adapt yourself back into your primordial state, whoa, what an experience. What a liberation from every single thing you suffer. But I get it. Because the intensity of the hypo-sensitivity of the power, that divine power to command nature, is also the divine power of creation and destruction. And when you realise the mindset people live in, they live in the mindset of creation, of destruction. Right? Listen to what I'm saying to you. There are two wolves inside you, the God of creation and the God of destruction. And everybody lives in the God of destruction in the mind without realising it. It's just a personality and it sounds heavenly. It sounds like a Christ consciousness, but it's only a mentality. It's not reality. Reality is outside the mind, and you learn that through a 3.5-year transformation. When you die and cross over and come out of your shell, I died in 2012 and went for a massive transformation with genetic memory and a genetic process with answers to tools and visions that come out of the blue. like a light bulb to you. The picture that tells 1,000 words you cannot explain, like you see in the movie Limitless. You can't explain it. And people that are trapped with brain fog in the mind can only 7 to 15% of the brain will never know, because they have brain fog to 85 to 93% of the brain. They all live in brain fog. That's what the movie represents, right? He's living the psychedelic effect, comes out of his shell with freedom and the liberation, and masters the mind and uses 100% of his brain. And then he can respond 7 times faster, just like the enemies in the Matrix documentary. When you live outside your mind, you don't suffer the consequences. Only if you give consent in your mind and trapped inside your mind and personality in mentality, and everybody is. That's what they suffer from. That's what the human conditioning is. That's the mental institutionalization, and everyone lives in a comfort zone while their body cells can corrupt solution in the daytime and can only work 1 to 5%. And now every American, 77% of their children is born with chronic diseases for that reason, because they were declared a species in denial in 2003 when they were told in 1999, your parents are crazy and they're losing their sixth sense, going to sixth mass extinction for the 6th time, and live in denial, declared 2003. So we cross people over back in their primal state with the book Freedom by Jim McGivers, the Holy Grail of Life, and Winner Breathing, right? The Holy Breath of Life. On a 40-day fast we teach every day to stop unnatural selection and cross over through the rebirth. When I went through the rebirth, it was back in my primal state with that transformation. Then I had a massive divine intervention. The rebirth itself, reborn on that day. And holy crap, I was never religious, never ever went to church, never read a Bible. But when I had that moment, holy crap, the orb of light came, Holy Spirit, divine light, and 3 powerful miracles were created that day to confirm it. Powerful, powerful miracles to confirm. But that moment, mate, I woke up the next day, I felt like $1 million, and it was the best feeling and the best day I ever had in my life. I was feeling love everywhere. I was feeling a relationship. I could not believe what I was feeling because of the person that I am, with the damage that I am in my goods, in my own mentality, with my own language. I'm hardcore, I'm tough. I've always been a father, very confrontational, always been an outlaw, but it was for a reason. I'm a tough, fast, hardcore father who's got the most powerful outcome you'll ever see in life. But the reality is, expressing love for me is not like everyone else. I don't live in a delusion. I'm not in sensitivity and conditioned into love and compassion with chocolates and roses, because real love is really powerful, very confrontational, and you have to be tough with real love. Real, genuine, unconditional love where you sacrifice yourself for everybody. Mate, you got to be tough to sacrifice yourself and face the demon head on yourself in such a way you sacrifice yourself for every child on earth. I sacrificed myself and I put my life on the line, my whole life, and done it against the worst systems in the world. Against the worst system. My cases in Australia by Chief Judge of Jersey is the most corrupt case in Australian history at the highest level in the Star Chamber inquiry, and you got to listen to what I'm saying to you. You can't get higher than that. In the Star Chamber inquiry, the most wanted in the Star Chamber, with godlike power by the biggest think tank and the biggest system, right? And you're the number one there, going right up against them and going against all their top scholars and going against them in the Trident inquiry and every inquiry, including the Martin Bryanbag plan, when we have the guns on the front page of paper that disarmed Australia 5 years earlier. We have the signers as well, and reverse Hitler's plan. Right there in the front page of paper, on the 8th of January 2001, I have the guns that disarmed Australia you paid for, taxpayers. So what am I doing with the guns? You don't think I'm a mastermind here? When I'm on the front page of the paper with the guns that disarm Australia, the Martin Bryanbag plan, and every serial number checked out, right there in the 8th of January 2001, take a fucking good look. I'm on the front page of the paper with the Martin Bryanbag guns, every serial number in a shipping container fully loaded, checked out, on the front page, that disarm Australia the taxpayers paid for, that was meant to be destroyed 5 years earlier. And you don't question that? Huh? You don't question who I am? You don't question the truth here? If I have the guns I have the two top science from NASA and reverse Hitler's plan with the most powerful truth serum that leads to this. Stood against the whole system. With the most powerful truth serum in the world that brought people back in the primordial state, and here's the real truth. You're under mind control. And the whole system wants you to stay under mind control. That's why they all are creative thieves and liars across the whole country, across the whole world. And everyone's an artificial human being don't care neither. Only care about themselves. Just actors all over the world in post-human stage. Believe me, I know. They're not humans worldwide. Over 95% are not fucking humans. They're only actors and act for someone else because they can only use 10% of their brain. Okay? And the top scholars with the highest IQ can only use 15%. So they act for someone else. 1.3% do not act for someone else because they master their own mind and use 100% of their brain with all their super godlike power. And they're the only ones that are right. The rest are trapped with amnesia and think they know everything about life with their grammar and their religious political goals and the new age. And I can tell you right now, they haven't got a hope in hell if they don't cross back over through the rebirth into their primordial state. The crossover, the rebirth, the great resurrection of humanity, the great transformation DNA with the genetic process and ancestral genetic memory that I have in my DNA. And I know better than anyone since I can do it in Christ can and more in every study done. Therefore I know how to bring people across through the rebirth because I went through it myself. And I didn't even know until these events. The 27th of February 2016, I woke up feeling like $1 million and an orb of light came through with the most powerful relationship I've ever felt in my life. And a guy named Fabian was being deported to Argentina, shit scared. And the minute that happened, I put my hand on his shoulder and I said, don't worry, you're going home to your mum. And he flew backwards when he was shit scared and went, wow, man, wow. No one will believe that, Kim. No one will believe that. Don't tell anyone, right? Now, we sat down and spoke about this. He was over the moon when he was shit scared and he went home to his mum. I wrote 3 official documents. If you unlawfully deport me, God will send me through the toughest space regionalism in the world. And he does, with the most powerful confirmation to back it up by border security. I go through 16 events. I'm not on one camera, every other person there is. I'm on CCTV outside, and the JP confirmed it. Fully confirmed. Most powerful confirmation on earth. And I write the 3 official documents that day, and 11 months later, I walk into Brisbane International Airports, and there we create the most powerful confirmation on earth, right? With border security, flew up from Melbourne to Brisbane, came in with the pastor Sarah, right, at Brisbane Detention in March 2017. Check it out. Confirmed. She had a massive divine intervention and came walking in with him, and he changed his whole face system and wrote the most powerful document on earth with the most powerful confirmation. God does exist with evidence. God does exist with evidence. So when that gets created that day, imagine how I feel, right? Not even knowing what's happening here, but God said he will do this. Write the official documents, and I'm going to send you home to see your mum and your brother, and they'll confirm to you that I chose you from the day you're born. And 2 massive miracles happened that day with my brother and my mother, and I found out what I never knew. And God did that for a reason, so that no one could lie to me about who I am, and from the moment I was chosen, because I got a confirmation. But God created most powerful confirmation on earth with the biggest security system in the world. And you know, when you go for an event like this, and you're chosen like this, and you're one of a kind, just imagine what I'm going through every day when I'm suppressed by 99.99% that doesn't care. But when you have your genetic memory of Christ, David, and Abraham, he was the son of Christ. Christ was the son of David and Abraham with his genetic memory when he woke up at 24. When you wake up and you end up with the same genetic memory, when you wake up from initiation in the reincarnation trap, and you're given that genetic memory, and you know how to unlock that within everyone else, the same genetic memory, then you realize you're not alone. That's why they said in the study, Kim, you're not alone, but you're number one in every study done, but you're not alone. So when we look at the rest, we look at the underground world, we look at the indigenous people, we look at the children masterminds that can harness the power. And then we see who can harness the power the most. Then we can see who has the divine interventions and the most powerful miracles on earth, because that's where they are. The most powerful miracles and most powerful divine intervention on earth, right there, in genetic memory and a genetic answers to us in our own DNA, the book of life. So you go through the rebirth. What you come to discover is mind-blowing. I never knew. I was trapped in here, man. And I had no idea. I was the biggest mastermind in the underground world. I brought the cure of the human condition man in 2008, and I still never knew until I died in 2012 and went through a transformation, and then this happened. I had no idea. When I went through the rebirth, on that day, with that kind of relationship, it was love pouring all over me with miracles. Me and Fabian sat down and spoke when the most powerful divine miracle that we've both ever seen in our life and experienced at the same time. And holy crap, you could feel the EMP pulse, the shining armor, the aura, the love, the Holy Spirit, divine light, whatever you want to call it, to satisfy your reptilian brain. I don't care. It's pure, unconditional love, so powerful. I've never felt love like this in my life. So high, high as a kite, and so balanced, and so peaceful, man. So peaceful and so beautiful. I have never experienced anything like this in my life. I could put everything together I've ever felt, every natural high, making love, sex, drugs, rock and roll, the whole lot. Nothing ever prepared me for this moment with this feeling and this high, and the most beautiful high and the most beautiful feeling I've ever felt in my life was going through the rebirth, being reborn, being chosen like this. Wow. And there are no words on earth good enough to express this. People think you're crazy, man. They think you're dreaming, and they think you're delusional. And that's the truth. If you try to express the truth about this, right? If you try to express the true feelings about this, you're that gobsmacked and that innocent, like a child, like a little child, and you're in tears and you're lost for words and you're gobsmacked and you're like, wow. Me and Fabian were sitting there like, wow, man. Holy crap, man. Did you feel that? Did you feel that? Yeah, I felt that. No one will ever believe it, man. No, I know. No one will ever believe that. Don't tell anyone. They'll never believe you. They think you're crazy. Because that's how you feel. You feel like you're nuts. You feel like you're high. You feel you're right out of your whole domain. You're right out of your vessel. You're like, wow. You're right out of your mentality. You're right out of your personality. You're completely out of your shell. And you're free. And you're feeling the most powerful love you've ever felt in your life. And there's nothing in the world that matches it. Completely free from your mentality and your personality. Wow. Free from every single thing you suffer in here. Free from stress, fear, anxiety, confusion, frustration, delusion, paranoia. Free. Liberated completely, and like, it takes your breath away like a massive meth effect, like MDMA, ecstasy, high as a kite. It's that powerful. It is honestly that powerful. When you go, right, and you're selected and you're reborn, holy crap. There are no words on earth that can genuinely express this that people will listen to. You can't be honest about it and down to earth, because it's completely gobsmacked and speechless and wow, like a child, and you feel like a little innocent child because you are in that moment. In that moment, you feel totally innocent, you feel brand new, and you feel like you've been saved because you've been saved and you know it. And for the first time, you realize you have been chosen and you have been saved, and you've had a massive divine intervention and a massive confirmation. Wow. Wow. And you know, when you go through something like this and you were never religious, you never went to church, you never read a Bible, you're not into New Age shit, you're not into grammar, you're not into anything that the world's into on social media platforms and their artificial intelligence, you're not into any of it. Then you're naturally selected like this, and you're not the only one. Then you find people selected like you. And they're the last human beings on earth you'd expect. You discover that. They're the last human beings on earth that most people will ever expect. Then you discover that. And we're all sitting there, right, selected like this, and we know we are the elect. We are the only ones that can teach the resurrection and the crossover, because we know. And that's why we do. We know what the crossover is, right? And you have to realize that most people don't know. They only think they do and talk shit all day with their opinions and prevent the genuine rebirth, the genuine crossover, and the resurrection of humanity. And that's why we're all saying, including Winoff and Mastermind Jing, very few people's going to go through this, man, because they're trapped so deep in themselves, in their opinions and their mind, no matter what they say. But they will suffer the consequences. Only those that release their mentality and their personality and cross back in the primordial state and go through the rebirth and go through the selection, they'll be naturally selected like this. And we teach that with our platforms, with our followers, with their testimonies. That's actually dedicating himself to do this with Winner Breathing and the book Freedom. And they're discovering what others will never discover. Real freedom and a genuine liberation, and going through that transformation that I went through myself. Okay? And I know it's not funny, but trust me, right now it's a battle between good and evil within every human being on earth. And if you don't get out of your mind and cross over and make the right decision, you'll never be selected with natural selection, a natural order that's happening worldwide right now, and no one's in control of this. The Father is with a quantum mechanic of a codependent relationship. To be innocent and to be selfless, right? With loyalty, honor, respect, moral, inspiration, encouragement. Don't use any other tools right now. Get out of your mind and stay in the positive light. Stay into your primordial state. Make sure you live by the quantum mechanic of that relationship with righteousness. Because if you don't, you will suffer the consequences. Believe me, I learned the hard way. I was a number one person in the underground world, number one criminal in jail, in the biggest mental research. And if there's one thing I come to learn, was one thing that was very critical. The minute you go through this, there's one thing that comes to you straight away. You didn't know what you were doing in here. And you realize the most powerful confirmation in the world is the Bible, where Christ says, Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they do in here. And he was an outlaw that stood against every religious political behavior and every New Age behavior in every single system. And when you go through this yourself and you have the same inflection point, you damn well know what's going on. And you realize you didn't know any better, and nor does anybody else. Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they do. When you understand the human conditioning correctly, you'll understand when you cross over why no one else knows any better. And this will answer every single question that you have, and every solution and every answer with the most powerful confirmation. When you cross over, you will understand every single thing. You'll never be confused again. You'll unravel every single thing with a picture that tells you 1,000 words that cannot lie to you. And believe me, it comes to you, right? And it comes to you out of the blue when you stick your head through the light in the tunnel, and then you know. You'll see it, you'll understand, you'll relate to it, and everything will make sense to you. You'll know. So practice what I preach and go back to your childhood for the 40-day fast. Take zinc, iron, magnesium, drink lots of water, listen to do Winner Breathing every day, and push the oxygen into the euphoria of ecstasy with the sacred secretion, with the holy breath of life. Listen to Jeremy Givers with the book Freedom on audio that would take you through the rabbit holes to stick your head for the light in the tunnel. That Plato describes in 15 books, the greatest philosopher of all time. Jeremy Givers studied Plato and the human condition for 45 years in a family tree, in that bloodline with DNA and genetic memory and a genetic process with ancestor tools, and found the last human being born on earth and the cure of the human condition that everyone suffers from. The book Freedom, held by 16,000 top scholars in the biggest world merge ever in human history, with Nobel Prize winners on the same page, the Holy Grail of Life, the book Freedom by G.M. Gibbs, DNA, the book of life. That's the book of life that would teach you how to use genetic memory and a genetic process by crossing back over in your primordial state to think instinctively and think outside the mind with your natural organic motor skills, with a God-given gift that God gave you that will prevent you in such a way that no other weapon formed against you will prosper. Freedom, right? Freedom, the liberation you've never ever had and only ever dreamt about. Imagine 10 times more fruit, 10 times more nutritious value. Imagine every single thing in the world being 10 times better with the most powerful divine intervention to command nature. So beautiful, you have no idea what you're missing out on. Imagine this is your future and never suffering again and never suffering a death experience. Because believe me, death controls everybody with stress, fear, anxiety, and paranoia and hypersensitivity going out of control and escalating 7 times faster worldwide, with mental disorders and defects going through the roof, with confusion, frustration, delusion, and paranoia, and a communication breakdown. Trust me, do not fail this mission, because it's judgment happening right now with natural selection, with EMP pulses worldwide. Okay? You got to cross over, make sure you're in the right mindset. Otherwise, you're going to 6 mass extinction, stripping the 6th sense for the 6th time. That's what's sending animals around circles all over the earth, right? Birds falling out of the sky and fish around circles in the oceans. And the last time we saw that was the days of Noah, and that's your most powerful confirmation, right? With the vine syndromes spreading like a virus, with peer reports worldwide in every hospital, people losing their magnetic pulse, their EMP pulse. So this is a battle between good and evil. And if you're not in the right mindset in your biological fields, you'll never know. And you'll never make it. You have to cross back over in your primordial state in your 6th sense with all your biofields and 27 senses. That's your divine power to command nature. And that gives you the weapon formed against you in such a way that no weapon formed against you can prosper. The biofields will come from the cave of prison with the tooth of masses, with fire coming out of my mouth like a thief in the knife in raggedy clothes with shining armor. That's your aura. That's your biofields. That's your universal power with codependent relationships. It starts with a man and woman, it'll finish man and woman. The 2 candlesticks, the 2 olive trees, the 2 witnesses. Mary went up as a pillar of salt and ascended with Christ, body and soul. Lilu, the 5th element, is the perfect element, Mother Nature, 84. Carnage is 27. Okay? Resurrection, Christ. Okay? Christ and Mary are the 2 pillars of salt. The 2 perfect elements, 84 and 27. The 2 perfect elements. The mother is a perfect element. The father is a metal rat, the king of all kings, the conductor. Divine power to command nature. The 2 pillars of soul, the soulmate relationship. Without that, you'll never have that God-given power. It'll start with a man and woman. It's going to finish with a man and woman. And you've got to follow the woman's seed. The woman's seed. You have to follow the woman's seed. That's why Mary is a pillar of soul. The 5th element, the perfect element, Mother Nature. Follow the woman's seed. That's the blood of the Lamb. That's the natural organic messages with supernatural power. The Christ image, the Father image in DNA, the book of life. The 2 pillars of soul in your own DNA to conduct with the aura that gives you the divine power to command nature with a relationship. So you grow 10 times more fruit with 10 times more nutritious value because you bear the right fruit with that kind of relationship. And that's the truth. When you cross over, that's how you create nature and fauna with 10 times more fruit, 10 times more sun, 10 times more oxygen, 10 times more love, 10 times more everything. That's your 10 times more high. High as a kite and free from every single thing you suffer and coming into a most beautiful dimension with 7-fold wisdom and knowledge to live at the tree of life. Just like when you die and cross over and you come back, you don't want to come back, you get a clarification and you see that love and you see fauna so beautiful and the colors so magnificent that you don't want to come back. We create heaven and earth in the future like this, in a new timeline where we create heaven and earth. 27 September 227 is exactly 2,000 across my bed by John on the new climate clock, 2-minute video you'll see on YouTube. Most important number place in the center society, 7-year countdown, 220, 227, the closest date to 27 September. Exactly 2,000 across my bed by John, 27 September 27. And that's the inflection point of no return. You don't cross over by then you face the consequences. Those that cross over go to a new timeline, a new era to create heaven and earth. And the Bible says, either you suffer for 1,000 years or you have freedom for 1,000 years. To live at the tree of life in the Christ image, to do what Christ can and more. Take your pick. No one ever dies. That's why they both say you'll suffer for 1,000 years or you'll be free for 1,000 years in the oldest Bibles in the world. So no one ever dies. You're trapped in the reincarnation trap with amnesia. And if you don't wake up this time, you'll suffer for 1,000 years. Those that wake up from amnesia and the reincarnation trap and go back in the primal state will not suffer. And from that date onwards, as the Bible says, there's no more heaven and earth. So you don't want to get this one wrong. There's no more heaven and earth. So you don't want to get this one wrong, guys. That's why I am your Father, and I will save every soul from your mentality and your personality, right, with the book Freedom, right, and we're not breathing. The Holy Breath of Life and the Holy Grail of Life.